Welcome to this week's edition of MIAA 360, broadcasting inside of MIAA Network Studios. I'm Ben Ferris. Coming up a little later in the show, we're going to have a conversation with Northeastern State University Athletic Director Tony Duckworth. Plus, we catch up with former MIAA Commissioner Dr. Bob Boerigter. But first, we had a chance to talk with Dr. Regan Dodd on her role as faculty athletic representative at Missouri Western University.
This is about my third year as the faculty athletic rep for Missouri Western State University, and it's such a unique role. You know, you're kind of the liaison with the university and the NCAA. You know, from the league perspective, I think we're really always here to kind of guard that student-athlete academic experience. We want to make sure that that the student-athletes really remember that their academics should be their first priority, and maybe learning those time management balance skills on how they can kind of really balance their athletic pursuits and their academic obligations, and kind of make it work all together in one. You know, that's been challenging, but I really do love the role as faculty athletic rep. You know, as a faculty member, you're definitely working a lot more just with students from the classroom. You see them 2 or 3 times a week. With the faculty athletic representative role, it's really allowed me maybe to develop more in-depth relationships with students, allowing me to kind of help and be part of their goals, you know, setting long-term goals and watching them achieve those, whether it be on the field or in the classroom. I think sometimes, you know, I may end up having to work on a weekend or so to get caught up on things. Trying to really, you know, preach or take in what I preach to students is to use your time wisely and really try to use each minute and get things done. But, you know, it's a balancing act that I'm trying to teach students, and I think as we become adults, you know, you're still always trying to find ways to use your time best and yet get everything checked off the list. You know, I think it does. It was an NAIA institution, but you know, so often I kind of can remember what the coach's perspective was on something, or what the athletic department perspective was. And I think sometimes, you know, even when it comes, we have an issue right now with a student with a makeup exam, and you know, I think sometimes I used to think, well, what is the big deal about faculty giving makeup exams? And while we really need to work together for the best experience of the student, I think sometimes athletics and student athletes don't realize maybe how the faculty member, it can be challenging to try to meet the needs of student athletes when they're constantly missing class. You know, just this year I was on the search committee that hired our new athletic director, Josh Looney, which was a fascinating experience. Just, you know, in a faculty search, you may have 15 people apply. In an athletic director search, you might have hundreds, you know, or quite a few more than 15. We'll definitely put it that way. So I've definitely been able to be involved in the hiring of quite a few of our coaches, and in our athletic director. Definitely working on, right now, on a committee trying to work out positive things for students that have temporary medical conditions like concussions, making sure that they get the appropriate accommodations, really kind of being that liaison between the faculty and student athletes, and making sure that student athletes aren't being penalized for missing class, but also that, hey, that they are showing initiative and they are developing those skill sets to be able to make things up in a timely manner and to communicate to their faculty member about what's going on. I think that communication piece is so hard, and even for us adults. So to be able to have upfront, difficult conversations, we really have to work with our athletes to do that. You know, it's so funny. I think it's the closest thing I do pretty much to coaching, maybe a little bit. It reminds me of my coaching days where you are working 24/7 with this group of students day in, day out. It's not just like seeing them 3 days a week. And I always tell them, you know, I said, for 4 weeks we're going to do what the Chiefs tell us, and even I am going to do what the Chiefs tell us. And they come from all over. I've had, West Coast, East Coast. I feel like I've developed such neat relationships with students. And one of those examples is your intern right now, Marianne, who was a training camp intern for me last summer. So yeah, it's really fun to watch and work with students outside of the classroom where, yes, maybe they are getting a grade, but it's such a different experience. We have to be out there every day at 7 a.m. In 100-degree weather, but when the day's over, they are so proud, and I watch the connections they make. The Chiefs do a really good job introducing them to all aspects and possibilities in sport. So it's definitely something that when the 4 weeks is over, I am ready for it to be over, but I love that 4-week period. It's so funny. He, just in the last couple years, has been more of a regular guest on the 810 radio. And so my sister and I always like to tweet in and kind of tease him and tease the hosts a little bit. And to his dismay, sometimes we might have quite a banter with them about his 30th birthday at one point, or the Dodd family dramas. So yeah, it was kind of fun. I got to be on the radio a little bit and just kind of learn a little bit more about what goes into putting on a radio show at camp and developing more connections. And I'm really proud of what my brother does and what all those reporters and do. It's as you know, not easy and in many hours, but so fun to see the connections of Kansas City and the interns and the Chiefs and so many people I grew up with or at camp I've gotten to know. And so altogether, it's just been a really positive experience for me to learn more about what the Chiefs do and be able to take those experiences in the classes I teach as well. It was so cool. Amber Feldman, did such a good job, and I was kind of shocked when she asked me to be a panelist because honestly, I was kind of in awe of some of the women that were there. I was a little disappointed I didn't get to bring more students. It was the day of the Northwest Missouri Western game, so that hurt us a little bit. But I brought one student, and Marianne was there, and I got to meet some neat women from Washburn, Emporia. I got to sit with some college students talking about their goals. I think it's so hard for 18 to 25-year-olds, even some high school students, to know what they want to do. And the fact that we're providing these opportunities for them to really see what they could do with a career in sport. And it's beyond just coaching, it's beyond just teaching. There was a female architect who had designed stadiums around the world. We had Patty Phillips from Women Leaders who talked about all these amazing experiences. So it was motivational for me. I love being part of the panel. I love the connections I made and just the excitement that the young girls showed and the motivation to want to work in sport, I think kind of helped energize everyone who was there. I was listening to I was on another panel with Platte County School District, and they talk so much about how dependability, that's just a quality they're looking in young people today. And, I think the other thing that I've kind of learned in throughout my experience with the Chiefs is how important internships are, right? How much you have to get out there, and in those first couple jobs may not be your dream job, and you have to be willing to do things that you may not want to and work hours you may not want to. So I think, for students that want to work in sport or student athletes that have certain goals, I think I tell them, you just have to get out there. You can't be afraid to move. You can't be afraid to apply for every job you can and just go for it. I think if you want to do it, and I've been able to watch a few students achieve their dream, and you put yourself out there, maybe be okay to be poor for a little bit, you can do anything you set your mind to.
On Tuesday, during the conference's athletic directors meeting, we got a chance to speak with Northeastern State University's athletic director, Tony Duckworth, on the importance of the league meetings, some of his experiences as AD, and what is on the horizon for Northeastern State University.
It's always a good time of the year after the new year to come together and see all our colleagues across the MIAA and go through some pretty important issues. There's a lot of things on the docket, particularly in preparations for next week's NCAA convention, as well all the ADs and SWAs and some FARs will be there to meet with the CEOs to finalize some things about future conference schedules and other important agenda items. Well, I've made several D2 basketball hires before, but never at the same time. That was we had one coach, longtime women's coach Randy Gibson, decided to retire and join his brother, our longtime coach that had retired several years before on the men's side at the golf course, I guess. And then the men's coach that we had previously chose to move in a different direction, and he and his family went back to their home state. So it was kind of a very unique process in terms of a number of the weeks that I was involved in that search process. Both were going on simultaneously. And one of the things that I've always tried to lean on, maybe more in basketball than any other search, because I was involved in college athletics as far as both assistant and men's basketball coach for 10 years. I really reach out to some of my former basketball counterparts and talk about different potential applicants or potential candidates that I should consider throughout that process. And we're thrilled about the two that we ended up hiring. Both have advanced previous other teams to the NCAA Division II national tournament. So we're real pleased about that. But if you ask me if I'd want to go through doing a simultaneous search in men's and women's basketball again, I would say my preference would be no, but maybe now that I've done it once, it'd be a little easier the second time around. Yeah, Follow Bullock came back as actually a former player of our recently retired women's basketball coach, and she was in a unique situation where she actually, right around the time she applied, she was at Armstrong Atlantic there in Savannah, Georgia, where they had made a decision at the University of Georgia system where they were consolidating Armstrong Atlantic with the Division I Georgia Southern University, I think about an hour and a half away. So she was the timing was great, and of course that was one of the things I really pressed not only her but her AD at the time and others about would follow have really pursued this position if it wasn't for those unforeseen circumstances of that consolidation. And everyone, almost before I could get the words out of my mouth, stated that absolutely she was excited about the prospects of coming home. And it's been great to have her back on campus and her knowledge of kind of the corporate culture that we already have. And of course she walked into a little different building than what she played in, so she's thrilled to be in our $18 million event center arena for sure. Well, you know, I think personally it's arguably the finest Division II basketball facility in this region of the country. I certainly think it really is hopefully something that really enhances the MIAA student athlete experience for all the different teams that actually come in and compete there in Tahlequah. But what a phenomenal facility, 3,100 seats, so it's the right size. It's not just overwhelmingly big. You know, you look at our office suites and our locker room space. You know, there's probably, I would say 50% of Division I's out there would probably be envious of that facility. But we did a great job with the architects and the institution and the athletic staff and the coaching staff and even student athletes in the programming of that facility. So we don't think we really missed anything in terms of what that facility needed in, you know, ultimately when it opened in 2013. Obviously we're now in 2018, and we're just thrilled with what that means to our basketball programs, to our athletics department, and certainly our university. It's a great place to showcase our annual commencements, both in the spring and the mid-year December commencement activities as well. But what a great facility, and our former commissioner here in the MIAA, Dr. Bob Boerigter, he indicated from his perspective it was a top 5 facility in the country. And as many places as he's been around and throughout the country, that was something that when he first came and was a part of that grand opening, he mentioned to me. I took a lot of pride in that because I know when you have someone of his pedigree and background making that kind of statement, that tells you that we hit it right at Northeastern State with that facility. We're in about our 55th year at Doc Wadley Stadium in its present location. You know, it's Gable Field at Doc Wadley Stadium, and those that come to our campus, if you'll make a quick swing by our library, you'll notice the parking lot in front of the library is where the original Gable Field was. And we have a great heritage wall there that's actually part of the original stadium. So it even kind of has a little mini feel of what it was back, 55 plus years ago. But we've been, there were some things that we needed to do with our football facilities, and certainly from basically a health and safety standpoint, we needed to replace that turf. The original turf had run its life, and certainly as you know, and others that are involved in athletics know that, over the past 10 to 15 years, the technology and how they're going about making that turf, making it safer, has really changed. So we feel like the turf that we have at Gable Field at our stadium is as good as you'll find anywhere at any level in the country. In fact, the company that installed it, the same crew were the ones that installed the turf at AT&T Stadium in Jerry's World for the Dallas Cowboys. So that was kind of a neat little side thing that we've had. But we've tried to be real strategic. We've done some other things there as well. We added a defensive lineman area that's part of the turf, but it's off the playing surface, where when the coaches are doing practice sessions, they kind of have their own space. And we don't have track at Northeastern State, so our actual square footage on turf is smaller than some of the institutions that have larger infields, if you will, just because they have the track. So that area really helped open up things and was really practical. In 2015 as well as 2017, we've done multiple things to our video board. We now have a high definition video board that really helps improve the game experience. And of course, the players, when they are coming off the Riverhawks walk, coming through tailgating and everything, they like seeing their video up there with the player starting lineup announcements. So there's a bit of beyond fan experience, a little bit with the student athlete experience and recruiting as well. But one thing that's the average fan and opposing coaches never really see is we were in desperate need of making some real renovations underneath the west grandstands, kind of the bowels of Doc Wadley Stadium. And just last month, it was approved by the President's Cabinet to move forward with a project this spring, a conclusion of our spring ball. And we kind of have two things on the table right now. Are we going to simply renovate what we have and replace the lockers is a priority, putting in new flooring is a priority, and then to improve the air quality? We're actually going to have a cadaver lab type HVAC system. It's going to have 100% outside air, so it's really going to help with the bacteria, the odors. It's not an overly efficient system, but it's certainly going to be one that when you walk into the athletic training in our football locker room, you're going to see a noticeable difference from the current unit we have. Our current situation is we have a split locker room, and right in the middle is sports medicine. So the dilemma we have between plan A and B, and of course it's money driven, is what we ideally would like to do is flip the north side of our locker room to where athletic training is now, and expand take up some of current athletic training and give them the north side of the locker room, and then just add to our existing south locker room, which will enable us to have an open space kind of in the center of our main locker room for pre-games and halftime, and just giving a little more roominess. As I told our President's Cabinet, certainly what we're doing in 2017 and 2018 from a programming standpoint, whether it's fitness centers, residence halls, locker rooms, is a lot different than we did, 20 and even in this case 55 years ago. So we're going to make some significant changes there. We haven't set the final plans in place. We have the A large portion of the budget's already set aside now with some additional private funding. I think we're going to be in great position to be able to do that real impact of expanding and kind of flipping things around, and that's going to allow great thing for our football program from a recruiting standpoint, from a retention standpoint, and at the end of the day, it's just something when we've had a facility like that, particularly with football players that as big and burly and rough as they can be on things, after 55 years, it's time to really address that and get it right. And following spring ball, we're excited about that. We'll do some renderings and different things here in the coming months once we get that actually finalized and go out to bid on the streets. But it's an exciting time at NSU athletics. Yeah, it's something that we take a lot of pride in. I think a lot of it comes back to the culture you have with your coaches in terms of the type of individuals they need to recruit. You want to try to minimize the amount of student athletes that you have to hold their hand in the classroom. There's always going to be some of that when you're dealing with a department of about 300 student athletes, but our coaches have done a great job of identifying student athletes that can compete at this level as well as perform academically in the classroom, and their ultimate goal is to attain that degree. That's the real prize. And so we've done some things, as I came in back in 2011, they added an assistant AD for academic services. We have, as things have gotten tough in Oklahoma in terms of state funding for higher education, when a retirement occurred, we actually lost one of our assistant ADs that was overseeing that. But it was one thing that as I talked with President Turner, it felt like we didn't need to lose that component of what we were trying to do in managing the academic oversight of our student athletes. So we added some responsibility to our senior woman administrator and gave her that responsibility. And so it's a team effort, and then obviously she worked closely with our senior associate AD, Matt Cochran, as it relates to compliance and eligibility and progress toward degree and evaluating transcripts and all of those things. So that, in conjunction with our coaches and ultimately our student athletes, have done a great job. And I know we've improved our ASR by 5 points over the past several years, and we're actually I believe we're at a 71 at this point. And prior to that, I didn't know that I felt like we could improve our ASR. And one thing we're kind of proud of in Oklahoma, there's 11 Division IIs in the state of Oklahoma, and I believe it's 7 or 8 of us are football playing schools. We have the highest ASR of football playing institutions, and I believe we're 3rd overall in the state. And the other 2s, coincidentally, that are higher than us don't play football. So that's something that we kind of, a little bit from a parents in particular on the recruiting side of things like to hear that we do have an academic emphasis, and we're real proud of that. That we're at or around that national average in Division II, and the last reports I've seen, we're generally in the top 3rd of the MIAA, and certainly we want to compete to win games. We want to compete to try to win championships in MIAA, but that's something that we take a lot of pride in, that we're scoring that well with our peers, with a lot of great other institutions as it relates to our ASR and kind of that NCAA standard for academics. Well, I tell you, it's you never know what a day may bring, as they say. Sometimes you come in with an idea of what your day's planning is going to be, and how you're kind of sharpening the saw to be ready for that, and you get hit with a curveball. The older I get in this business, I'm now a little over 25 years in college athletics. I've come to realize when there are those moments where there's some dullness, I've grown to appreciate those, because I know at some point there's going to be some excitement, and that excitement always isn't fun, But an AD, particularly, we talked about coaching searches. Back a number of decades ago, there was that toy called Stretch Armstrong. Well, that's one where you, during coaching searches, you feel like a Stretch Armstrong because you have so many factions with, and it's good, that are a lot of different people are giving input, advice from the administration to alumni to fans to people internally, and you really have to balance all that to make, and then identify someone that's not only qualified but also a good fit for your team, for your institution, and then ultimately you wear a lot of hats as an AD. I think servant leadership is really, really important. ADs, I think, that are willing to sometimes roll their sleeves up and help with setup or clean up or address things. I think it's really important. It demonstrates to your staff that no job is too small. Then you're dealing with most of our ADs, if not all of our ADs, are direct reports to their president or chancellors. You're dealing heavily with your chief financial officers, the other vice presidents. I'm heavily involved with our academic deans. You have your faculty athletic representative that you're dealing with, department chairs, then obviously alumni, fans, season ticket holders, boosters, key alumni. And in most of our communities are small communities, so you're even involved with community leaders. So there's just a lot of different things that that you're involved with, and there's a lot of it, as we joke about in college athletics, there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks. Trust me, ADs get plenty of suggestions, and you always have to be gracious, you always have to be receptive, because many times that different lens they're looking through is something maybe you haven't thought about before, and you can kind of take that and shape that and help whether it's a game experience or your recruiting experience or your marketing and branding can improve. But it's the life and times of an AD is never dull. It's always, or it's rarely dull, I should say that. But it's an exciting time to be at NSU. We've gone through some real difficult things as it relates to state higher education funding in the state of Oklahoma, but our leadership has done a tremendous job of weathering that storm, and we're a large enough institution that while there's been some pain, we've been able to get through that and continue to put together a great product, not only athletically but also academically, and serving the 14 counties there in Northeast Oklahoma that the institution was founded to serve.
Finally, we caught up with former MIAA Commissioner Dr. Bob Boerigter on life after the MIAA and the new Dr. Bob Award of Excellence.
Well, I've been very fortunate. I've been able to help the Northern Sun Conference, which is our neighbors to the north. They have a number of events in Sioux Falls, which is my new hometown, is where I now live. I helped them with both their basketball and softball tournaments last spring. The NCAA called on me and asked me to help with some of their spring championships, and I was involved with as a site representative in Mankato, Minnesota, at Minnesota State in softball, and then in Emporia, Kansas in baseball in the spring. This fall, I've helped site rep a couple of postseason football games up in Minnesota, again at the University of Minnesota, Mankato, and I really very much enjoyed that. I also have become a significant volunteer with the Sioux Falls Sports Authority. That's like the companion organization to the Kansas City Sports Commission. And last year I helped with the Elite Eight basketball championship, and of course it was a real thrill to see an MIAA school, Northwest Missouri State, win that. And this coming spring in March in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, we will be hosting the NAIA Division II Men's Basketball Championship. I am actually a former chair of the NAIA Basketball Tournament Committee, and then we also will be hosting the NCAA Division II Elite Eight for both men and women. And so I'm working with the Sioux Falls Sports Authority to help host both of those events. So I've been involved with them in terms of those volunteer opportunities. Well, I was, and I appreciated the invitation from Jim Johnson, my friend and colleague at Pitt State. As you know, the MIAA was involved in a number of their schools in hosting some tip-off basketball classics as we started the season. And there was, of course, some significant events going on the Pittsburgh State campus. And here in Kansas City at Municipal, we had 3 or 4 MIAA teams playing, 3 games a day. And so I was invited back to help run those events, and that was really fun to do that as well. So yeah, I was there for that, and then I came back for the Tip-Off Classic with Central Missouri and Northwest Missouri State and Washburn that they were involved with as well. So it's very much fun to still keep my hands involved as a volunteer. And the thing which is really nice when you're a volunteer is you're given responsibility, but you no longer have authority. And you don't give instructions, you listen for the instructions. And I have really enjoyed the new role that I've had. I did do one on-campus consulting project for a small college who was between athletics directors, but I'm really not in the consulting business full-time, but I do receive probably maybe 1 call a week from a former colleague or a friend who's looking for advice or information here and there, and so it's been fun to continue to be involved through those contacts. I'm incredibly honored and flattered that they would put an award in my name. You know, I never officiated a game in my life, but I was very much involved with our officials, and I found that our official supervisors and our officials really were my best friends. And the dedication that they put in and how important they were to our competition is just very difficult to put into words. You know, we have great competition in the MIAA. And in order to have great competition, you need to have great coaches, and you need to have great players, and you need to have the events administered well, but then you need to have good officiating. And you know, that was really a point of emphasis while I was here, and we saw some significant improvement in terms of our development and in terms of how the officiating programs were monitored and supervised and everything. I was just very, very pleased with that development. So it's really a model now that so many other Division II conferences are trying to follow. And I just had a very, very small part in it, really. But to be recognized and be a part of that award is significant and has incredible meaning to me. So I really do appreciate that. Well, I hope I can. One thing I haven't mentioned, I've also gotten involved with the public schools in Sioux Falls, and I have helped with their fall football games. And we have this iconic football stadium in Sioux Falls, and we play a number of high school doubleheaders on the weekends, and I assisted with a number of those games as well. And that's allowed me to get to know a number of people in the athletic realm within the city of Sioux Falls, which I've enjoyed. So I hope I can continue to do this. Sometimes you have to have circumstances work your way. You know, we have to have postseason events that occur within close proximity to Sioux Falls. And if they don't have other people to serve, I'm sure they'll call me. But so we have to kind of wait and see how that goes. But in the meantime, I do watch a lot of MIAA events on my computer at home and follow the progress of the teams in this league very, very closely.
And that's our show for this week. From all of us here at the MIAA Network, I'm Ben Ferris. Thanks for watching, and until next week, bring your A game.